Hello everyone and welcome to this week's video. This is the second part in Tolkien's Constructed Languages series. If you missed part 1, you can check it here or here somewhere. It was just a bit of an intro into all or most of Tolkien's constructed languages, like a general overview. But today we are diving into the fascinating world of Quenya. So if you came here to learn the basics of Quenya, one of Tolkien's Elven languages, then you're in the right place. I say basics because if you've ever tried to learn a language, you know that it's practically impossible to learn it from a single video, as cool as that would be. But yes, in this video we will go over the basics of Quenya. I will compare it to English so that we can see how it actually works, and we're gonna look at a few examples, and in the end we're going to deconstruct a sentence in Quenya. So I hope that this video can be useful to anyone who's interested in Quenya, who is perhaps hoping to expand, their horizons in terms of knowing Tolkien's languages. And perhaps, it can be a good starting point if you are planning to actually learn Quenya. Now, how do you make language learning interesting? I don't know yet. Honestly, trying to make this video engaging and something that doesn't bore you to sleep was the hardest part of making it. So yes, let's give it a go and tell me if you fell asleep by the end of it. Or, well, if you do, you won't tell me, but... Anyway, let's get into it. The way this video will work is that it will be divided into several sections where we will look at different word classes. Now, don't be scared if you're not a linguist. Word class is nothing super terminological or super intellectual. It just means different types of words. Nouns for people and objects, verbs for describing actions, and to connect different sentences together. I want everyone to be able to follow this video, not just people with a linguistic background, but I want it to be understandable to everyone. That's why we're starting with the basics. Here is an example sentence where you can see pretty much most of the word classes that exist. I'm putting this here just so that you kind of have an idea of what we're talking about, so that when I start talking about nouns or adjectives, you're not just like, wait, what? As you can see, nothing special, everything you know already. Maybe you just don't know what it's called or the terminology for it. So now, with this in mind, let's finally look at Quenya. We begin with articles. English uses the as the definitive article, so to talk about something specific or where there is only one of such thing, like the One Ring. And a or an are indefinite articles, so for something like a hobbit. Quenya has the equivalent to the article. In Quenya that is atan, the man or the human, because atan is a word used for, not for the gender, but for the species. So yes, atan, the man. There is no equivalent to a or an, so in this case you would just skip it. If you wanted to say a man, you would simply say atan. And that's basically all about articles. Really simple, really straightforward. Okay, now let's go to nouns. Quenya nouns are divided into 3 major classes. I won't go over each of them because that's just too dry. But what I will do is highlight a few other things. Let's compare it to English, because English also has different noun classes, proper nouns for people, common nouns for objects like tree, apple, and so on. What is not similar to English, though, is that Quenya has noun cases. What this means is that nouns in Quenya basically change their form. They get an ending, a suffix in the end, or a prefix in the beginning. They change depending on the sentence. This will be more clear when we look at examples. In English, you can say, this is an apple. The apple is missing. Give the hobbit an apple. See how hobbit and apple always remain the same in all these 3 examples and in more examples. They wouldn't really change. It's always hobbit and apple. English does have this to an extent, but a better example of a real-life language that has noun cases would be maybe my native Slovenian or German. You have probably heard of the genitive case, the dative case, the possessive case, and some others. In German, you would, for example, have dem Mann, so to the man, or des Mannes, of the man, something belonging to the man. But back to Quenya. In Quenya, we have 7 noun cases. Sounds complicated, and it it kind of is. I mean, you don't really have a choice but to learn that by heart. Let's look at another example to maybe clarify a few things. Iatan atane kirma I eldan. The man gave a knife to the elf. Elda means elf in Quenya, and the reason why it has the n in the end, eldan, is to make it mean to the elf. We don't have an expression, we don't have the preposition to, so we have to modify the word itself, so elf, the noun itself, and add the ending n to make it mean to the elf. Unlike English, which has singular and plural, Quenya has 3 different kinds of plural. Singular, but then dual, plural, and something called the partitive plural. Dual is generally used for natural pairs. Ears, eyes, hands. One hand, ma. 2 hands, mat. Plural in Quenya is formed by attaching either r or I to the end of the word, depending on whether it ends on a consonant or a vowel. Alda, tree, aldar, trees, or atan, man, to atani, men. And the partitive plural that I mentioned before, you could sort of say that it's equivalent to the English some, like saying some trees, some hobbits, some apples. Alda, aldali, some trees. Quenya, of course, has pronouns too. I, we, you, they, all that stuff. And more, actually. You can see the chart here, and yeah, sorry, but you're gonna have to learn this pretty much by heart too. There's no way around it. In Quenya, there is a polite and a more familiar way of addressing someone. This, again, is similar to duzen and sitzen in German, which is, you know, du versus sie, right? Using du or sie for a person to address them. Slovenian has something similar too, but since most of you probably don't speak that, maybe if you're familiar with Korean, you can draw parallels to Korean politeness levels, although I would say those are a little bit of an extremer version of that. In Quenya, depending on your relationship with the person you're talking to, you might address them as you formal or you familiar. So if someone is your close friend, you will use a different kind of you for addressing them, and if they're maybe your boss, or in the context of Lord of the Rings, your lord, your king, you will address them with a different kind of you. Okay, now let's look at Quenya verbs. This is another huge group because verbs denote actions, and there are many actions that can be done. So in terms of vocabulary, there's a lot to learn. In terms of verb forms, there's a lot to learn. Again, verbs are divided into 3 groups, but let's try to stick to the more basic stuff, for example, forming tenses. Quenya verb tenses are quite similar to English. Basically, you have one way of talking about the future, you have 2 ways of talking about the present, and 2 ways of talking about the past. So there are 2 present tenses, sort of similar to the present continuous and present simple. So you could either say I am looking or I look, I am cooking, I cook. So one is for ongoing actions, the other one is for habitual actions. Let's compare the 2 Quenya present tenses. Iatan kena, the man is seeing. Iatan kene, the man sees. So here we have the verb ken, or the verb stem ken, and then everything else is the ending. Kena, kene. This isn't as straightforward because the verb endings depend on the verb type. Remember the verb groups, right? And also on whether it ends on a consonant or on a vowel. So the whole thing gets a bit more complex. But again, if you want to do a deep dive, I highly recommend the website that I'm using for all this information. Actions that happened in the past can also be expressed in 2 ways. So something like have seen, have done, have cooked, or I cooked, I did, I saw. Iatan kene, the man saw. Iatan ekenye, the man has seen. So this ekenye, as you can see, the verb ken gets the prefix. It gets modified in the front of the verb. And for describing future actions in Quenya, you have one way, and you basically have a simple future tense. It's formed with the suffix uva. Iatan kenuva. So uva attaches to the end of the verb. The man will see. The verb to be is a little bit special, as in pretty much every language. It's an irregular verb, meaning its forms change quite a lot. If you think about it in English, you have to be, but I am, you are, he is, you would never think that the verb to be, am, and are is the same verb. And to be is also quite special in Quenya. To be is na in Quenya. It has quite different forms in different tenses, but let's stick to the basics. In the present tense, this na, to be, is optional, so you can leave it out. Iatan alasea, the man is happy. But na can also be added to the end of the sentence, so you basically have two options. You could also say iatan alasea na. Okay, so if we can say that the man is happy, we should also be able to say that the man is not happy, right? Well, Quenya does have ways to express negation. However, Tolkien kept changing his mind on how to form negation in Quenya, so basically what developed was a sort of neo-Quenya. See, Quenya has three major negative particles. Two of them basically mean the same thing and can be used interchangeably. So we can negate a sentence by saying either iatan ui norne or iatan la norne. And the third negative particle is used for expressing, for saying that you are forbidding someone to do something or if someone is refusing to do something. And this is the particle va. Valienore, don't run. But let's go back to our unhappy man. Well, we can say that in three different tenses, of course. The past, the future, or the present. And we can either use ui or la, as I mentioned before. Iatan ui alasea, the man is not happy. Iatan une alasea, the man was not happy. Or iatan uva alasea, the man will not be happy. And as you can see here, this negative particle is also the tense marker. The tense can be, seen in the particle ui. It tells us whether the sentence is in the past, present, or future. So if we can say regular affirmative sentences and negate them, then there must also be a way to ask questions. Quenya has the interrogative particle ma, and this ma is added to the beginning of a sentence to turn it into a question. Example, iatan noruva, the man will run. Ma iatan noruva, will the man run? So pretty straightforward, and again, we have a bunch of question words, just the same as in English. Who, what, where, why, same kind of thing in Quenya, and again, you kind of have to learn that if you want to know it. Last two big categories we need to cover are adjectives and adverbs. These will enrich everything we say in Quenya. So what is this man that we've been talking about for the past however many minutes like? Is he kind, friendly, arrogant, rude? And how did he run away? Awkwardly, clumsily, swiftly? For that, we need adjectives and adverbs. Quenya adjectives generally end with on a, e, or n. Now, this doesn't tell us much, so let's look at a few specific examples. But before that, another important thing is also this. The adjective in Quenya must be declined to agree with the number of the noun. Basically what this means is that if a noun is in plural, the adjective has to be in plural too. This is something English doesn't have. It's either a red apple or red apples. Notice how red always stays red. Red as the word does not change, even though we have apple and then apples. If you speak German, this linguistic rule does apply though. You can either have ein roter Apfel or rote Äpfel. In Quenya, we don't have apples, but we do have elves. Vanima elda versus vanime eldar. Notice how both the words change. So the adjective beautiful elf and beautiful elves. There are more ending declensions, but that's another rabbit hole for another day. The good thing is, though, that in Quenya and in English, adjectives normally come before the noun. I alasea atan, the happy man. You could also switch it up and say that the man is happy, in which case you would say iatan alasea, the man is happy. Notice how again we have the verb to be, and in Quenya it's omitted. Iatan alasea or iatan alaseana. As for adverbs, Quenya doesn't use them as commonly. It's adjectives that are usually used as adverbs or in place of adverbs. For example, nornes linta, he ran swift, if we translate it literally. A suffix ve can be added, and it roughly corresponds to the English ly, so swift, swiftly. Linta, lintare. Now, let's deconstruct this well-known line and try to understand it. Elen, sila, lumenn, omentielvo. Most Elvish lines spoken in Lord of the Rings are actually in Sindarin, so we'll have more examples when we tackle that language. But for now, yes, let's look at this sentence. Elen means star, and we don't have the star, so it's just elen. A star? Okay. Sila comes from the word sil, the verb, right, to shine. And then the a in the end tells us that this is the present tense. Elen sila, a star shines. Or technically it's shining, because technically speaking this would be present continuous. Lumenn comes from the stem lume, which means hour or time. So it's another noun. And when we add the double n in the beginning, we transform it into on the time or on the hour. A star shines on the hour of our meeting. So this, technically speaking, is then the elative case. Remember the chart? Yeah. Lastly, we have omentie, which is another noun that means meeting. And when we turn it into omentielve, we get the right person. So we, you and I, right? We need to make it into on our meeting, is shining on our meeting. And we need to make it into omentielvo to get the right case, the genitive case, onto the meeting of you and I, of us. There's a lot that's packed in this one little word into how it's transformed. But yeah, there you have it. Elen, sila, lumenn, omentielvo. So as you can see, Quenya is quite complex because it works very differently from English. The words change their meaning by changing their form. English works a lot with prepositions like to someone, of someone, with someone, but Quenya doesn't have that. Quenya will change the word itself, the noun, or the verb, or both, or even the adjective, right, as we have covered. So you kind of have to change the way you think about constructing sentences when you're talking in Quenya. It's absolutely very difficult, but I think it can be quite rewarding once you figure it out. You can be quite pleased with yourself. So yeah, this was a very rough and very basic introduction into how Quenya words, verbs, nouns, adjectives, and so on are formed. If you made it all the way to the end, to this point in the video, do let me know, because you are awesome and I hope you enjoyed the journey. This video took a lot of time to research and put this together into a comprehensive kind of thing. So don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed it and if you learned something new. And feel free to fill in any gaps or correct any mistakes I may have made. And don't forget to share this with your fellow Lord of the Rings fans, with your fellow Tolkien fans. Let me know if you've ever tried learning Quenya or any of Tolkien's other languages. In one of the upcoming videos, maybe not in the next one, but quite soon, hopefully, I will look at Tengwar, so the script, the writing, the alphabet of Quenya and Sindarin. So we will hopefully be able to write a couple of things in that beautiful script. So if you find that interesting, do stick around. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more Lord of the Rings related content. We do a lot of things on this channel, from craftsy arts and crafts to linguistic and other type of essay videos. If you like surprises, you're gonna like this channel. So yeah, that's it for this video. Take care and I will see you soon.